coming on the air with former President Trump saying he's not going anywhere because he says the FBI took his passports, along with, of course, those boxes of top secrets documents during that search of his Florida home. What we're hearing today exclusively from former National Security Advisor John Bolton about how his old boss, he says, was not super careful with his records. And the breaking details just coming into us on why the Justice Department says its key affidavit in this investigation should stay secret. Plus, new details on another Trump-related investigation, this one out of Georgia. The former president's former attorney, Rudy Giuliani, now considered a target. We'll explain what it means and why he and a Republican senator may have to talk with the grand jury. And you've heard of the Rust Belt, the Bible Belt. How about the extreme heat belt? It's going to hit more than just the South. Why folks as far north as Chicago may soon have temperatures that feel like 125 degrees on the reg. Plus, we go behind the scenes on employees determined to set better work-life boundaries. Maybe you're one of them. The quiet quitter TikTok trend in tonight's backstory. And speaking of breaks, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man won't be on social media for a while. We'll talk about why Tom Holland is stepping back in a controversial way from his online life later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are just now finding out in the last few minutes as we're coming on the air that federal prosecutors want the judge overseeing the search of former President Trump's Florida home to keep that affidavit sealed. So what does that mean? Basically, it means we're not going to know the reason why the FBI carried out that search for a while. It comes as we're getting some exclusive new details from Mr. Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, about how his old boss, in Bolton's words, worried people all the time with how he handled classified documents. Here's what he just told our Ken Delaney in late today.
I don't think the president particularly cared what the rules were. He had a very distorted view of what the president's constitutional authority was.
We now know the FBI seized 11 sets of documents that were not supposed to be at Mar-a-Lago, including 4 sets labeled top secret and one that's a level above that, a level above top secret. And it's not just documents. The former president says the FBI took his passports, even though we should add the specific mention of passports was not on the property receipt that's been unsealed. Neither NBC News nor officials publicly have confirmed those details. And then over on Capitol Hill, you've got Congress demanding answers. The Democrats in charge of the Senate and House Intelligence Committees want what they're calling a damage assessment on any threat to national security from the Biden administration. And some Republicans have their own ideas on what should be turned over. As, look here. Do you see this? These are barricades that have been put up now outside the main FBI office here in D.C. That's because FBI and Homeland Security officials say there have been a spike in threats against them since Monday's search a week ago led to this whole firestorm. One guy out in Pennsylvania actually just got arrested for making threats. He posted them on the right-wing site Gab, saying people who worked at the FBI deserved to die. So that is the backdrop that we begin with tonight. Ken Delaney is joining us now to talk about not just his exclusive interview with John Bolton, but all of this. And let me start with this affidavit, probable cause affidavit, being requested by the Department of Justice to stay under seal. So in layman's terms, it basically means that the government wants it to remain a secret for now, why they decided to go in and look for these, now as we've learned, top secret and classified and sensitive material that was at Mar-a-Lago.
That's right, Hallie. And they actually addressed the question of, well, can't you just release it and make some redactions? They have blacking out the names of confidential sources or particularly sensitive details. And they essentially said in the first footnote of the document, if we did that, we would have so many areas blacked out that you wouldn't understand a word this thing was saying. So basically what they're saying is there are so many sensitive details associated with the scope of this investigation, the basis for the FBI search, how they learned about it, that they just are not willing to make it public right now. And I find that very interesting because if this was just about, hey, the government wants its classified documents back and now it's got them, I really don't think the affidavit would be all that sensitive because it would be over, essentially. It suggests that there are some larger issues at play here, a larger scope to this investigation.
Yeah, it's a good point, Ken. And I'm looking through, not to be like, the cliche anchor with a prop, but like, as I'm looking through this, hot off the presses as we're coming on the air here, you make the point about the first footnote here. You also make the point, I think it's important here, about the sort of broader implications of this, right? Because the question remains, and I want to just set some expectations for people here. It's not like tomorrow the FBI is going to come out and say, hey, look, here's all the things we found. Public, let me tell you about them, right? This is going to be weeks now that the FBI, the Department of Justice, is going to sift through this material, continue on with the investigation. But what you've heard, I know, from John Bolton, who is the former national security advisor in the Trump administration, is that this is part of a pattern, in his view, of the former president just being pretty sloppy with stuff like this.
It absolutely is. And John Bolton's pretty talky these days, I should say. He talked to our colleague Kelly O'Donnell yesterday. He talked to me again today. And he paints a picture of a President Trump, when he was national security advisor, of a president who liked to collect documents, even classified intelligence. He would ask for copies, and then Bolton and the top intelligence officials would have no idea what would happen to them. And the thing is, because Trump didn't really read intelligence briefings, the briefers would come in with a lot of graphic imagery, charts, photos. And at one point, Bolton talked about, and we've reported on, President Trump tweeted a highly classified photo back in August 2019 of damage to an Iranian missile site, a photo that was taken by one of our secret spy satellites. He just tweeted it out. Take a listen to what else Bolton had to say today.
I think he accumulated a lot of things, not necessarily by plan. That would imply a strategy, which he didn't normally have. I think things came into his possession he thought were cool, and he wanted to keep them.
And so we're talking about not just things, but highly classified intelligence documents, some of which may have ended up in those banker boxes in the basement at Mar-a-Lago. Hallie.
You've also got, we talked about the fallout on Capitol Hill here. There is one, if you look at the Venn diagram between what Democrats want to see and what Republicans want to see, there's an area in the middle. Actually, we're showing it. Classified documents. You have the top Republican and the top Democrat on the powerful Senate Intelligence Committee saying they have clearances to see this stuff. They want to know what specifically was taken out of Mar-a-Lago. What are the chances that actually happens based on your reporting?
So I think the chances are good that the intelligence committees, or at least the Gang of Eight, will get to see these documents. But I think they're going to get them from the Director of National Intelligence, because the Justice Department never likes to give Congress anything to do with a pending criminal investigation. They say that's not the law. They have no obligation to do that. But the intelligence community does have an obligation to provide updates on significant intelligence matters. And so it stands to reason that the intelligence community is sifting through these documents, trying to figure out what they are and how damaging they might be. And if they have them, then that means they can share them with members of Congress. Now, House Republicans are also requesting a host of documents from the Department of Justice. They said they issued what they call a preservation order, which is what you do in litigation. They're not going to get any of that stuff because they have no right, actually, to the internal documents of a criminal investigation, Hallie.
Real quick before I let you go, Ken, we talked about stepped-up security, not just in Washington, but around the country after this joint bulletin from the FBI, from the Department of Homeland Security, basically saying they have seen more specific threats. They're warning of more potential violence ever since that search at Mar-a-Lago a week ago. Now we're seeing this person arrested in Pennsylvania just today for making threats to law enforcement. As you're talking with sources, Ken, how on edge are they feeling at this moment?
This is the worst they've ever seen it in terms of threats to federal law enforcement, Hallie. Wow. Really bad, very specific, credible threats, addresses of FBI agents being posted on the internet, really bad stuff.
Ken Delanian, the specificity of it, the threats to family members, too, it's a lot to take in. Thank you so much for your reporting today. Appreciate it. We've also got some breaking news out of Georgia on another Trump-related investigation. A lawyer for Rudy Giuliani tells NBC News Giuliani is the target. That's a specific word. It's in quotes on the screen there. Giuliani is a target of a criminal investigation into how Mr. Trump and others may have interfered in the 2020 election. Remember, Giuliani, of course, is the former attorney for Mr. Trump. He'll have to testify in person this week. His lawyers say initially Georgia prosecutors had told New York courts Giuliani was a material witness. That's like a different distinction than target. Tom Winter is following this for us. Tom, biggest question, what does it mean and why does it matter that Giuliani is now considered a target?
Well, we're still waiting to hear back from the prosecutors that are involved in this investigation, or at least their spokespeople, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. It's looking into whether or not Giuliani, Lindsey Graham, others have been involved, and obviously the former president, in efforts to try and interfere with the 2020 election after the votes were counted or in the process of being counted. That's what this centers around. It's a grand jury, but not a grand jury that can indict. They can issue a report, and from there, prosecutors can decide whether or not there should be charges. Specific to Giuliani and this distinction of target or material witness, it doesn't carry the same weight as it might in the federal system. In the federal system, it is specifically laid out in the U.S. Attorney's Manual, the guidebook for federal prosecutors, as to what a subject or a target might mean. And a target means things legally. So in other words, you can't call somebody before a grand jury without telling them in advance that they are the target of an investigation. That might change to the level that they want to testify or invoke the Fifth Amendment, assert their Fifth Amendment privileges, Hallie. In Georgia, based on a legal expert I've spoken with that has a criminal matter before the state, it's kind of a bit more amorphous. Certainly, it might mean the potential for Giuliani to face criminal charges in that state as a result of this inquiry. But right now, that hasn't been determined. It's certainly not particularly good news for him, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything for him legally right now.
Before I let you go, Tom, we're also learning about somebody else who is an ally of former President Trump, and that's Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He may now have to testify. He doesn't want to, right? He said he's going to appeal a judge who said, no, you got to, right? But does Senator Graham have a legal leg to stand on, or will he get hauled in to testify?
I think the judge's ruling has been pretty clear here so far. We'll have to see if on appeal it's overturned. But at this point, it appears that Graham will, in fact, have to testify in this. Whether he's a witness or a target, it may not change anything for him. But that's a little bit further down the road, Hallie.
Tom Winter, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Sure.
Just a few hours ago, the State Department calling it despicable that Iran is blaming author Salman Rushdie for his own stabbing attack that's left him in a hospital where he is slowly recovering. State Department spokesperson Ned Price saying it wouldn't be the first time that Iran has threatened Rushdie's life.
It is no secret that the Iranian regime has been central to the threats against his life over the course of years now. It's despicable, and we want it to be very clear that it is not something that we can tolerate.
Iran has said it has nothing to do with the stabbing attack and that it's Rushdie and his supporters' fault that it happened. Remember, the author was stabbed about a dozen times as he was being introduced before speaking on stage at an event on Friday. The suspect, 24-year-old Hallie from New Jersey, has pleaded not guilty. Iran's also saying they don't know who Matar is. They have no relation to him. Ron Allen is with us now. And Ron, let me start with sort of the geopolitical piece of this, because Iran has had its eye on Rushdie for decades now. And today they're kind of saying, hey, you know, leave us out of it, basically. How do you read this official response?
They're also saying that they're glad to see that this happened, essentially, in some state-affiliated media over there. So there's that as well. They're saying they weren't responsible, but they're not condemning the attack, and they're not saying that this should not have happened. And you're right. Yes, he's been a target for Iran and for a lot of extremists around the world since 1989, when a year after his book, The Satanic Verses, was first published. It's considered blasphemous by many in the Muslim world. It's a satire that many feel paints the Prophet Muhammad in a bad light, in a unflattering light, to say the least. And that's why he has been a target. It's an extraordinary thing that if, in fact, this suspect is connected to that this has been going on now for 3 decades, during which Rushdie has been safe. He's been under heavy police protection. He's changed his identity in the beginning to go into hiding. And now, some 30 years later, he's been attacked for the first time. It's just extraordinary.
And he's lived, to your point, Ron, he's lived he's lived openly over the last few years, right? After going through all of the things that you had described after the Satanic Verses was published, now in the late 80s at that point, right? Like, how much, do we have any sense of how much this attack may change that? Because this was horrific. I mean, stabbed more than a dozen times at an event.
Yeah, I would think he's going to be very, very careful after this. Yes, the event in Western New York, there was very low security. It was a literary festival in a very rural and relaxed place. There were no metal detectors. There was no bag searches or things of that nature, as best as we can determine. And yes, in recent years, Rushdie has been more public. He has made comments suggesting that he thought that this fatwa, this edict for him to be killed, was was gone, was a relic of the past to some extent. So, yes, going forward, I'm sure he's going to be much more careful. He is still in critical condition, by the way. This is not, he's off a ventilator, and he's got some very, very serious injuries, life-altering injuries is the way his family put it. So he's going to be hospitalized for some time, I would think. But security is going to be very heavy, and there's a concern in the United States about whether this sort of attack incites more violence. That's one thing that was said at the State Department, a concern about this attack, that there could be others who do other kinds of things inspired by this. And again, it's just extraordinary that this young man who was this suspect, who's pled not guilty, we should say, is 24 years old, apparently carrying out this edict that had been out there for so many, many decades. It's just extraordinary.
You mentioned this briefly, Ron, but the condition of Salman Rushdie, I mean, the fact that he's even off a ventilator, I think his family members, his reps have said he's speaking now. He's actually able to talk. It is going to be a long road to recovery, though.
Indeed, he endured as many as a dozen stab wounds and even more punches and kicks is what we understand. And he could have some nerve damage, neurological damage in his arm and in his eye is something that's been reported. He's a 75-year-old man. He was beaten very badly, apparently. And we don't know his overall health, but yeah, he's probably in a very precarious place just based on his age and what happened to him. And this was a very, very violent attack.
Ron Allen, thank you very much. Appreciate your reporting on this. In Chicago, a judge in another federal trial for R. Kelly rejecting his lawyer's request to turn away any potential jurors who have seen the docuseries Surviving R. Kelly. That's because R. Kelly is back in court on charges of child pornography and obstruction of justice after his 2008 state child pornography trial. Now remember, the jury acquitted Kelly of charges then, partly because the alleged victim did not end up testifying. But prosecutors say it's actually because Kelly threatened her, paid off her and her parents. Now, she and at least one other victim, allegedly, are ready to testify according to court documents. Kelly has denied any wrongdoing. Less than 2 months ago, Kelly was sentenced to 30 years in prison in New York on charges of federal racketeering and sex trafficking. Again, he has denied those charges. Maggie Vespa joins us now. And Maggie, let me take this in a couple of buckets, right? Because there are, this docuseries became the center of the conversation today at jury selection. There's a lot of people who have watched it. Kelly's defense attorney said, hey, anybody who's watched it shouldn't be allowed to serve on the jury. The judge said, well, not so much. Like, talk us through this, because this is somebody who is internationally very famous, now infamous, right? Extremely well-known, docuseries aside.
Absolutely. R. Kelly is a now disgraced worldwide superstar, as you pointed out. And when that docuseries came out, which, remember, I had to go look this up, it came out in January 2019. COVID wasn't even a thing. So think about the news cycle in January of 2019. It was a huge moment. It was also a huge post-Me Too moment, or the post-start of Me Too. So Surviving R. Kelly, which was on Lifetime at the time, got a lot of press and a lot of people saw it. So cut to now, his attorneys say if anybody saw that, they're clearly biased against our client and they can't be on the jury in this case. And the judge said, well, kind of because of the ubiquity of that series, a lot of people saw it and it might not have meant that much to them. So he said if they saw it, okay, maybe ask more questions. If they watched every episode and saw every minute and felt strongly about it, then maybe that person should be excused. But just by itself, seeing the docuseries, he said, is not a reason to exclude jurors.
We talked about this a second ago, Maggie, but this is essentially, and I'm a little bit oversimplifying it, but this is kind of a redo of the 2008 trial. Now, explain how this is now a second trial on these charges.
Yeah, definitely. So just to really simplify it, it's not bringing back the same charges from 2008. What this is addressing is that federal prosecutors have now said the 2008 trial, which was a state trial here in Illinois and here in Chicago, that R. Kelly and his employees at the time, his business manager and another employee, allegedly did things during that trial basically to suppress evidence, paid off witnesses, including the victim in this case, the girl who at the time they said she was 14, was caught on camera being sexually abused by Kelly. They say he paid her parents, he paid a guy to go find the tape of it and then paid him to be quiet about what he knew. So they said this is really going back and saying, hey, you got acquitted by doing things that were illegal. So now we're bringing new charges about what you did during that trial, and that's why they're calling it kind of a redo. Hallie.
Maggie Vespa keeping an eye on this for us from Chicago tonight. Maggie, thank you. A new report out today shows that a so-called extreme heat belt is taking shape all across the country. It's starting in the south, where, yes, you would expect to see high temperatures, I know, but this time, these researchers say the heat's going up as far north as Chicago. And they say it could affect more than 100 million of us over the next generation, over the next 30 years. Do you see the belt on your screen? This is what we're talking about here. You know, there's like a rust belt, a Bible belt. This is the heat belt. And here, it would feel like 125 degrees on average. That's the kind of numbers you see in places like Death Valley in California or in parts of the Middle East. It comes as we're seeing another major study that shows climate change has already doubled the chances of California getting a mega flood. The state had a similar one more than 150 years ago that just knocked out some communities in a matter of minutes. Experts say this one could be unlike anything anyone's ever experienced. Bill Cairns is joining us now. And Bill, you know, we just got over a heat wave here in Washington. Most of the summer has dealt with most of the country, I should say, has dealt with an extraordinarily hot summer. But this new extreme heat belt is something different, right? This isn't a one-off. This is like what life could just be like.
And what life will likely be like. I mean, that's what the climate scientists are doing now. They're taking the data from what they get from how much fossil fuels we're putting in the atmosphere, and they're telling us what our planet is going to look like and what our climate and our lives are going to look like in the future. So let me just kind of put it in perspective, comparing it to today. Today's a hot day in the South. No doubt about it. It still feels like 107 right now in Shreveport. So this is the heat index. This is the temperature combined with the dew point, and this is how it feels in the shade. So picture 107 is a hot day. So the study that came out, so I wanted to compare what it's going to be like next summer and then 30 years later. So they took 2023, next summer. These little dots you see on here, these are areas that could have at least one day, just one day of a heat index of 125. 125 is extraordinarily hot. That's dangerous for almost everyone, not just children and elderly. And then 30 years from now, considering if we don't really fix what's going on with our global fossil fuel emissions, this is how many people will experience a 125-degree day. Everyone in the pale color here, this beige color, that's one day. When you get to this next level, that's two. The red would be 3 days during the year. So that just shows you how much warmer we're going to be, Hallie, as we go throughout, you know, the next 20, 30 years. The potential is much greater for those extreme days, and those are the ones that kill the most people.
So it's the heat, but also out west, it's the water, too. And when we think of California, and, you know, I lived there for a little bit, it's like all about not having enough water, preserving water, the scarcity of water, droughts. Now there's this warning of too much water and a once in a multiple lifetime kind of flood here, right? That could have really catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, now
I also don't want to, can I just say, Bill, I also don't want to be like one of these news people who like gets over their skis and is like, oh my God, big flood's coming. We don't know that that's the case.
Right. I mean, we know there will be another historic crazy flood in California. It's happened before. It'll happen again, just like there was a crazy big earthquake in California. We'll have one of those again. This study took the worst case scenario. And here's a picture. I mean, it's grainy, but this was 1862. This was downtown Sacramento with canoes and boats in the middle of the town. So it's happened before, and it will happen again. Now, when, we'll have to see. But what this study did is it took the warming of our planet and it put it into a computer to say how often will we have these mega flood events. And they have showed these lines going up, increasing as we go throughout time towards the end of this decade and end of this century. So that's what they were looking at. And the main reason why, the driver of it, is what we call atmospheric river events. We get these more when we head towards the winter time in California, but they expect more of these with a warming planet. And of course, when you get these atmospheric river events, think tropical air heading into California, heading up into the mountains. That's when you can get, you know, persistent storms that can be with us for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And you could have these really historic flooding events, Hallie. So it's happened before. It'll happen again, but they may happen more frequently is what the new study told us.
Bill Cairns, great to see you. Thank you for that climate breakdown, as always.
Thank you.
Coming up here on the show, she was heckled off the Oscars stage nearly 50 years ago. What we know now about a long overdue apology coming for Sachin Littlefeather. Plus, we'll head west, way west, for a look at tomorrow's key primaries. The Republicans in the spotlight as voters in Wyoming and Alaska get ready to head to the polls. We're live in both spots. So, you know, voters in Wyoming and Alaska, they're heading to polls tomorrow for some of the most consequential primaries so far this year. Now, you may be thinking, Hallie, Wyoming and Alaska, these are not typically states where we talk about the stakes being super high because they'll flip the balance of power. That is not actually the case here. So why are these races big deals? Because they're referendums on some big-name Republicans who voted to impeach former President Trump after January 6th and who are investigating the attack on the Capitol. And the results of these races will give us a sense of just how revengey the Republican Party feels. In Wyoming, you have Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who was also, by the way, censured by her own party for her work on the January 6th committee, a big underdog against the Trump-backed candidate, Harriet Hageman. In Alaska, you have voters trying out this something called a ranked choice voting system for the first time. The return of former governor and vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin. She's running for an open house, for a House seat there. You also have the woman on the other side of your screen, Senator Lisa Murkowski. She voted to impeach Mr. Trump. She's fighting for her seat. The former president has endorsed her opponent. So again, a test of the Trump power here. Joining me now is Vaughn Hilliard in Jackson, Hallie Vitale in Anchorage. Two bombshell datelines. Vaughn, I'll start with you there in Wyoming for us and talk me through this Cheney race, right? Because I've been on the phone with some sources this afternoon, just looking ahead to tomorrow. And one of the things that sort of is unanimously being said is, like I had one person say to me close to her folks say, they've never seen a group of people who are so likely to lose be so okay with it because they're looking ahead to the next thing already. And I thought that was pretty telling about this moment.
It's the first battle of what they intend to be a long and much bigger fight than this here. Ultimately, when you look at the polling, it's been clear over the better part of the last year that she was in deep trouble here. Why, though, Hallie? It's because this state is made up of, and when we're talking about registered Republicans and Democrats here, you're talking about it being 4-1 here. And the issue for Liz Cheney is, frankly, Republicans here in Wyoming, they don't like her right now. And they have a different option. Harriet Hageman, who is a land use attorney here, longtime GOP activist, who is a Trump loyalist, endorsed by the former president who held the rally here earlier this summer. And frankly, when you're looking at Liz Cheney, there was some hope that when they had these January 6th Select Committee public hearings, that she would be able to help sway public opinion, including Republicans, so that they would see the risk that Donald Trump posed to the United States and also to the future of the Republican Party. But when you see over the last couple months where we find ourselves today, not many of them were clearly swayed.
I found that interesting, too, that some of the folks that you talked to cast this in terms of, and I don't use this word lightly, but almost that they felt like Liz Cheney was a traitor to their party. I think Cheney's team feels like that's not actually the case, right? That she is fighting for their party and the future of their party. Tell me more about what you've seen on the ground in Wyoming and what Cheney's next steps are here.
Hallie, we've driven from Casper to Cheyenne to Laramie to Jackson.
I was going to call you out, friend. Because I love you and I love this state.
I'm not just hanging out in the mountains of Jackson Hole.
Jackson is not where you go if you want to find a bunch of Republicans, right? As you well know. So, yeah, talk to me about Cheyenne, you know?
Right, and that's why ahead of this trip, we wanted to make sure that we made it to these places to really have those one-on-one conversations, staying out of random establishments as folks came and went. And I asked them just open, without any further question, tell me about Liz Cheney. And I think it's telling, as you just said it, the word traitor, the number of times it was used, the word betrayal. I think we were used for so many years in political back and forth, referencing it as political rhetoric. It's not rhetoric here, though. You're talking about a mass of the American population, epitomized by this smaller Wyoming one, who believe in the conspiracy theories that have been propagated by the former president and echoed by these statewide candidates like Harriet Hageman. They truly believe that Liz Cheney is undermining the institutions of this country and is looking to take down Donald Trump because he is a perceived enemy to the Cheney-Bush era of Republican politics, family dynasties. That's what people truly believe. And you have seen over the course of the last 5 months, Hallie, these Trump-backed candidates consistently win these major primaries. And after these public hearings, and after Mar-a-Lago being a search warrant being executed 1 week ago, guess what? The voters here tomorrow are going to send yet another signal about the future of this Republican Party today.
And former President Trump is almost certain to take a victory lap on that. Vaughn Hilliard, good to see you from Jackson, friend. Thank you. Hallie Vitale is with us from Anchorage, Alaska, one of the most beautiful spots in the country. Hallie, let me take this Alaska race in 3 different buckets here. Let me do Sarah Palin, let me do Lisa Murkowski, and then I want you to talk about the twist of all of this, which is this new voting system this year that's kind of throwing a wrinkle in things. Sarah Palin has a lot of name recognition in this state, but so does her opponent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sarah Palin has name recognition. So does the other Republican in this race, Nick Begich. He's sort of his own kind of political dynasty here in Alaska. And then there's the wrinkle of the third person in this race, which is Mary Peltola, who's the Democrat here. And you hear it in the way that she talks, that Peltola talks, trying to find consensus, not a lot of vitriol here, in part because she's someone who says that Alaska has a very small town feel to it. It's a massive state, double the size of Texas, but here is a place that everyone knows each other. There's a larger sense of community, and it's why a system like ranked choice voting may be beneficial to voters here, because they can sort of take party out of it a little bit and look at the people who may build the most consensus. For someone like Sarah Palin, who has a firebrand persona that really was the Republican persona of right now, before right now, she's someone who may not benefit from this kind of a system because of how hyper-partisan she is. Nevertheless, we've even seen her take a little bit more of a conciliatory tone when it comes to talking about her rivals here. I think the question for Palin is, will people have long memories to the time that she was governor and then decided not to finish out her first term after running with John McCain? Right. That's something that people are remembering here. And then also there's the fact that Trump endorsed her. So it's a question of how much sway does this guy really have in a state where, yeah, he won in 2020 by 10 points, but they also have an independent streak here.
You referenced the ranked choice voting. We just showed a graphic of it. So let me take that bucket next, Hallie. And as we lift our heads out of the weeds here, right? Like, the bottom line with ranked choice voting is what? Why does it matter, and why could it make a difference?
Well, experts who want it to be more incorporated across the country say that it's a more reflective and small d democratic way of voting, because you're not just picking in the binary, I want candidate X or candidate Y. You're choosing based on rank 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you pull up a ballot, for example, you'll see what Alaska voters are going to see, which is all of these candidates' names listed, party denoted but not separated out, and they then get to rank number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Whoever comes in this case in third, because you're only choosing among 3 candidates, they're eliminated, and then the voters who voted for them, their second choice is parsed out through the other 2 candidates, and that's how you ultimately get your winner.
Lisa Murkowski has been described by former President Trump as, and I believe I'm quoting correctly here, the #1 bad. He doesn't like her. He doesn't like that she's spoken out against some of the things he's done. She is also somebody who's been kind of scrappy in Alaskan contests before. How should we be thinking about that race?
Yeah, certainly Murkowski is no stranger to a long shot bid or a tough re-election. In 2010, she mounted this now infamous write-in campaign, which is no small feat, given the fact that her last name is not the shortest or easiest to spell. But that's something that she's not unaccustomed to. And so as you head into this race, yes, she's facing that Trump headwind. But at the same time, voters I've talked to here enjoy the fact that she doesn't just go along with the party line. At the same time, though, in the way that some people point to the fact that she just voted, for example, on the gun violence prevention bill, they like that. Other people don't like it at all. And when Trump came to town, he really made no bones about it. This is someone who he does not like, who is on his hit list, similar to Liz Cheney. He wants to see Murkowski out.
Are you eating breakfast? Like, what time is it there?
We are currently 4 hours behind you, my friend.
Oh, okay.
So we are eating at all hours of the day, just snacking around.
We will see you tomorrow night, I am sure. Hallie Vitale, thank you, friend. Appreciate you and your team being there. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, China responding to another unannounced visit by U.S. lawmakers to Taiwan and carrying out more military drills in the water and airspace around the island today. Senator Ed Markey and 4 other lawmakers are in Taipei, got there late Sunday. It comes after Speaker Nancy Pelosi's stop in Taiwan during her tour of Asia earlier this month that set off several days of Chinese drills. Number 2, a wooden bridge in southern Norway collapsed today with a car dropping into the river below. Look at that. The truck got stuck on kind of like this raised section. Luckily, the driver of the car was able to get out by himself, and then a helicopter pulled the truck driver to safety. Amazingly, both these drivers are doing okay. Number 3, a medical emergency led to a packed school bus slamming into a home near the Ohio-Indiana border this morning. The Union County Sheriff's Office says first responders had to perform life-saving measures, CPR basically, on the driver. 32 students were on board. None of them were seriously hurt. Number 4, the Motion Picture Academy says it will apologize to a Native American actor for what happened after an incident at the Oscars nearly 50 years ago, according to The Hollywood Reporter. In 1973, Marlon Brando had Sachin Littlefeather take the stage to decline the Best Actor award he won for The Godfather because of the, quote, treatment of American Indians by the film industry. She faced backlash for years because of it. Now, she's been invited to be the guest of honor at an evening of healing and indigenous celebration hosted by the Academy Museum next month. Number 5, you and a jumping spider may have more in common than you think. Why? A new study from researchers in Germany, Italy, and the U.S. found jumping spiders may get into REM sleep, and they may even have dreams, just like you or me. But do they have nightmares of themselves? Because I have nightmares of them. Researchers filmed these hanging jumping spiders at night and noticed they curl up their legs and seem to twitch uncontrollably, which reminded them of maybe some REM sleep that you could have. Well, there's your nightmare fodder, your nightmare fuel for today, folks. Talk to you tomorrow morning. Up next, Brittney Griner's appeal. We've got new details on the latest push by her attorneys to get her out of a Russian prison ASAP. We'll talk about the impact that may have on those prisoner swap talks. And then later, another honor for murdered rapper Nipsey Hussle, how he's being remembered in his hometown. New reaction just into us tonight from the State Department on that appeal being filed by WNBA star Brittney Griner's lawyers in Russia. Spokesperson Ned Price saying that this appeal does not affect their push to try to get Griner out of a Russian prison as soon as humanly possible.
No element of this trial changes our judgment that Brittney Griner is being wrongfully detained and should be released immediately.
Griner might be stuck for another 9 years in Russia after being convicted 2 weeks ago for having cannabis-infused vape cartridges. Griner has said she made an honest mistake. Experts on Russia's legal system suggest her only hope of getting out now, anytime soon, is through a prisoner swap. And we're learning Russia may be more open to talking about the proposal put on the table by the U.S. Griner and ex-Marine Paul Whelan, also an American, in exchange for the Russian arms dealer Victor Bout. Kristen Dahlgren is following this one for us. And Kristen, let me start with that appeal. Like in the normal, perhaps, let me say it this way, in an American legal system, an appeal is sort of part of the due process. But we are talking about Russia here. And even before the trial, experts were saying there was virtually no shot that she would end up, out of prison. Why do it? Why make this move?
Right. And so a couple of things probably going on here. One, pursuing all avenues. While there is a lot of talk about a prisoner swap, it's certainly not a done deal. So that is one thing they could do in the Russian legal system. But really more likely it's to keep her name out there and to win in this court of public opinion, really garnering sympathy for Griner as these talks continue about this kind of high-level prisoner swap. Her attorneys arguing that the sentence was excessive, even in Russian court. They say that most people with this type of offense might get something like 5 years. Many of them are paroled. Of course, she got almost the maximum sentence. That would have been 10. She was given 9.5. So probably a lot of this is for the court of public opinion more than anything, Hallie.
I want to read what we're now hearing from a senior Russian diplomat on this topic that you just mentioned, Kristen, of that prisoner swap, acknowledging that the U.S. and Russia are talking about this through accepted channels, saying Moscow wants Bout, we kind of knew that, and saying that the mentioned names are really being considered. This is I would say, a notably more, if not optimistic, Kristen, at least a more open tone that we've heard from Russia before. What's behind that?
Right. And it's interesting because we didn't hear anything from Russia until this past weekend. They finally confirmed that these talks are going on. I imagine a lot of it was really waiting to see the conviction. And they've also sort of said, even now, that they want these negotiations to be done through the proper channels that the presidents have decided on, rather than arguing it in sort of this microphone diplomacy, is what they were calling it, and saying they prefer these talks to really be private. And, these are sensitive negotiations. There is a lot on the line, and it's all sort of in the background as we're starting to hear more about these prisoners that could be on the table. Buddha called the merchant of death for his, his arms dealings around the world. So really a lot on the line as these decisions are made, Hallie.
Kristen Dahlgren, thank you for that breakdown. Appreciate it. We got a lot more to come over the next couple of minutes. The backstory up next, going behind the scenes on this TikTok trend you've probably heard about, kind of controversial, about how we set the lines between work and play, and maybe a new chapter in the Great Resignation. Are you quiet quitting? Are you quiet quitting right now? Bert isn't. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Southeast Bureau, a scary scene, but luckily nobody was really seriously hurt after a roof partially collapsed at an elementary school in Memphis, in the library area this morning. No students were in there at the time. 3 adults had to be taken to the hospital. The Memphis Fire Department is checking to make sure that the rest of the building is structurally safe. From our West Coast Bureau, hip-hop star Nipsey Hussle was honored today with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You'll remember he was shot and killed in 2019 outside his L.A. clothing store called Marathon. The rapper was from L.A. and would have turned 37 years old today. From our Midwest Bureau, the votes are in. The Cincinnati Zoo announcing their new baby hippo's name on the Today Show this morning. Did you catch it? That's Fritz. 200,000 people voted on little nugget baby Fritz's name. He was born August 3rd. He's been spending time with his mom in the bloat. That's what you call a hippo habitat, a bloat. Fritz will soon join the other hippos at the zoo, including his big sister, Fiona. Hey, Fritz. Time now to get the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. And tonight we're talking quiet quitting. It is all over TikTok, a trend where mostly younger people are posting about putting some lines in place. How about that, between work and life? Because they say they're feeling burnout. And these posts, so many people are engaging with these posts. The hashtag quiet quitting has 4 million views now. Sam Brock talked with one so-called quiet quitter about what this actually means to her.
Quietly quitting for me is acting my wage and knowing that my time is valuable in the specific time I have, and that I don't feel bad for not going above and beyond.
So remember, this isn't people quitting their jobs, right? So quiet quitting is kind of a misnomer. It's really just like doing what you need to do and not going above and beyond what you need to do. There's some pushback. This is controversial from career coaches and experts who say this doesn't really work if you're trying to jumpstart your career or run your own business. But it's part of a bigger conversation that a lot of workers are having right now, especially as the pandemic winds down. It's kind of like what we saw with the Great Resignation. People are taking a step back and they're reevaluating their work-life priorities. Sam Brock did this story. He is joining us now. Sam, I'm so intrigued by a lot of this here because I wonder, to get an employee to talk about doing just the bare minimum at work on camera when their bosses may actually watch them do the interview had to have been a hard sell, no?
It is. There's a little magic that has to go on there. But I will say this, Hallie, just in terms of the backstory, we did reach out to about 5 or 6 people who had posted videos on TikTok. They wanted nothing to do with it. Either they didn't respond or they just flat out said no. The woman that we ended up interviewing, Natalie Flores, who you heard from a second ago, she had commented in the thread of posts for a LinkedIn article about quiet quitting. And we reached out to her and said, can we talk to you about this specific wage aspect? And once we explained what we were doing with the Today Show, she agreed. But what's also notable about that is for her, pay was the issue. But for a lot of people, it's not necessarily that. It is not just working the minimum either and setting work, personal life boundaries. It's also about a sense of purpose and a mission. And a lot of people, when they start out at their jobs, feel that higher purpose. But if there's not enough contact with managers or they don't really understand what they're doing in the arc of what the company is trying to accomplish, they lose interest. And there's really a widespread feeling of that right now throughout corporate America.
I think I have a little bit, I'll be honest with you, Sam, because we love to unzip our skins and get a little vulnerable on this show. I have a little bit of a hard time understanding what some of the backlash is to this, right? And I wonder if it has to do with the industry that we're in, because right now, in the news business, you have to when there is news that has happened, you have to do the news. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different sort of pace. And like, I wonder if that's something that you were thinking about as you were pulling this story together, or if that's like getting too personal for you.
No, 1,000%. I almost laughed when I was talking with the career coach, and she said, some people, they don't want to work 10 hours or 12 hours a day. And I'm like, where can I sign up for that? I mean, we're working 16, 18, 20 hours a day with regularity. Hallie, I'm not sure that you actually sleep. I mean, I would be surprised if you actually get like 2 hours of sleep a night. But for most functioning human beings, that does not suffice.
And this is why I have a little bit of trouble. Like, of course, and like, so I feel like in my old age, like I have really come to appreciate, I think, like a work-life boundary. Do you know what I mean? And so, and I think that like I have like, superiors and managers who also appreciate work-life boundaries and who encourage me to appreciate work-life boundaries. And I wonder, like, is that because I have good managers, or is that because there's maybe a generational disconnect here?
Both. And, I think you make a really good point, which is when you give everything that you have all the time, generally your managers hopefully will understand that you need some space to spend with your kids, to spend with your loved ones, with your significant other. But when you're on the job, man, are you on the job. But also, bigger picture right now, if you want to be a managing director at an investment bank, if you want to be a partner at a law firm, if you want to go into medicine, whatever your specialty might be, you're not getting there working 6, 7, 8 hours a day. That's just not going to happen. Now, for some jobs, and this was the point of the career coach, if you are trying to just really have an enjoyable life and reach that balance, then you've got to set boundaries. But if your goal is the aspirations of reaching the highest levels of the profession that you can get, this is completely irrelevant to your life and how you function on the day-to-day.
It's an interesting topic. It's obviously created a lot of conversation, a lot of controversy. I could talk to you for like 45 more minutes about it, Sam, but we have other news to get to. How fitting. Thank you very much, friend. Appreciate it.
45 minutes less sleep.
Exactly. We have some breaking news, actually, coming out of New York City. And this is just coming in as we've been on the air here. Big delays in New York, pushing back planes and flights for up to 2 hours or more. And the FAA, just in the last couple of minutes here, has tweeted about this. They've said it's because of, look at this, unexpected staff availability. It means that at one of the biggest airports in the country, they've got to reduce the number of flights at JFK, at LaGuardia, and at Newark to keep everybody safe. I want to bring in Tom Costello, who is joining us now. Is this I think the obvious question, Tom, and I don't know the answer, is this a sick out? Is this a strike? Is this just a coincidence? Like, what's going on?
Sources tell me this is not a sick out. Sources tell me that, in fact, they've got an unexpected number of people who are suddenly on sick leave. Now, when I asked specifically, is that because of COVID, the answer was not necessarily. Could be part of the issue, but not necessarily all of the issue. The trouble is, this is the most congested airspace in the country, and you cannot substitute somebody from a less busy type of tower or TRACON and slip them into this role, because you need to have experience and precise training to be able to step into New York City airspace. So as a result, they've got to lower the tempo ever so slightly. That means fewer planes coming into JFK and Newark, as well as LaGuardia. We're talking 2-hour delays at the moment. I think I've only seen one cancellation so far. That could change, but likely to build through the evening here with flight delays and maybe cancellations later. And the FAA is making the point it's on them. They're not blaming anybody else. They're not blaming the airlines. They're saying on this one, we simply are in a staffing crunch because of sick leave issues that are ongoing right now.
To broaden this out beyond just a New York-centric story, there could be domino effects from this, no, if the delays persist related to other flights on the East Coast into the Midwest?
Yeah, there usually is. I mean, I think I read at one point that something like 25% of America's air traffic transits over or through or into and out of New York City airspace. So you can imagine right there the ripple effect, right? If you're trying to get down to Charlotte, go to Denver, go to L.A., whatever the case may be, there will likely be a ripple effect. However, if you're just flying right over the top of New York, hopefully that won't be as big of a problem as if you're trying to get into and out of New York.
Tom Costello, live for us on that breaking news. Tom, thank you. And thank you, by the way, for keeping the seat warm all last week while I was out. You are much appreciated, friend.
Big shoes to fill, but it was a lot of fun. You've got a great staff. Thank you.
Grateful for your service, as always. Thanks. All right. Spider-Man actor Tom Holland has a new message about taking some time away from social media, and it is reaching millions since he made this announcement. Nearly 19 million views on his Instagram post, 7 million likes and counting, after Holland told his followers he's going to stop scrolling. He's going to get offline because it was getting to be, in his words, overstimulating and overwhelming.
I get caught up and I spiral when I read things about me online, and and ultimately it's very detrimental to my mental state. So I decided to take a step back and delete the app.
He is getting so much love for this, okay, for opening up, for talking about the impact of social media on his mental health. Justin Bieber, fans telling the actor, take as much time as he needs. And listen, Tom Holland is a superstar, but he's not the first one to do this. Ed Sheeran, Camila Cabello, Demi Lovato, they've all taken time off social media for similar reasons. Gotti Schwartz is joining us now. And Gotti, this is like a super famous person, right? He's like he's Spider-Man. He's got movies. He's dating somebody else who's like a mega superstar also. And I wonder, and I sort of applaud Tom Holland, I think, for the impact of being a big name and a big voice, saying, hey, mental health matters, and we don't have to be online constantly about it.
Exactly. And Hallie, there's really two ways to look at it. There's the post, which speaks to what he's been going through as an individual. Then also, as you mentioned, there's the reaction, which seems to show that millions of people are feeling the exact same way. And yeah, famous people like Bieber have been showing support in the comments. But more importantly, he seems to have touched this zeitgeist with millions of everyday people that can totally relate. And Hallie, reading those comments, it is very clear he is getting people to wonder if us humans are wired to get this much stimulation at all times, to be this connected to as much instant feedback. Hallie?
Dude, my very non-expert answer on that, is no. I mean, Twitter is I'm going to be honest, I think it's a hell site. I post like 5 tweets a year because I had to also step away from it because it can be a super toxic place for me, at least. You know, comedian Amy Schumer just posted this video. It's very playful, and she kind of jokes about all the things that she does online, this sort of parody video saying she's going to spend more time on social media for her mental health. Like, she's obviously being sarcastic because she's sort of making the point nobody gets a benefit from mental health for being online. Gabby Douglas, the USA Gymnastics champ, just announced she's taking time off. That said, some people do find positive connectivity from social media. It's a balance.
Absolutely. And that Amy Schumer post, I mean, some people were like, oh, this is awkwardly timed. Just like you said, I think it's perfectly timed. I think that sarcasm really gets driven home. Let's take a quick look.
Today is helping me. So you'll be seeing a lot more of me on social media just for my physical and mental well-being.
And look, Hallie, there are studies that suggest that a week-long break can lead to significant improvements in well-being, in depression, in anxiety. And then, as you were mentioning, there's studies or there are people that say that it is hard to determine how much impact social media can have when there's other big impact or big factors at play. You've got the pandemic, you've got the economy, changes to education. So, Hallie, you just shared some of your experience. All I can really tell you is what I see firsthand, and it just, anytime I see something like this, it just makes me want to delete,
What is it?
Delete Instagram. Just do it right now.
Don't do it. How am I going to see baby pictures? Gotti, come on, man. The people demand it.
I think I'm going to delete, and then we'll check back in a week.
This is a moment. This is an award-winning moment here from Gotti Schwartz.
Delete Instagram, deleting app.
If you seriously keep off of this for 1 week, I'm going to bring you back in a week and see how you do.
1 week, it's gone, and I feel lighter already.
I'm shook, my friend. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll call you after the show. Thank you. We got a little bit of quick breaking news to get to, actually. Boy, that's the theme of the last couple of minutes here. Coming into our newsroom, we got to tell you about former Trump Organization CFO Allen Weisselberg. He's expected to plead guilty to criminal charges tied to his indictment by the Manhattan DA's office as soon as this Thursday morning, of course, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. And a public court filing. Terms of the plea have not immediately been disclosed. This is significant, of course, given that Weisselberg was a central figure inside the Trump Organization. We're going to stay on top of this story, and you'll see more coverage right here on NBC News Now. We are 1 minute over in our newscast because that's how much we fit in for you here. More tomorrow. Good to be back with you. We'll see you then.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.